As Canadians, we're incredibly curious.
Canadian television has a crisis of imagination.
Et je m'identifie beaucoup à tout le monde qui lutte contre un monolithe.
English and French being the only two official languages is bullshit.
George Stroumboulopoulos over here, in case you didn't know who he is.
Please welcome the program, Jackie Chan.
All right, all right, all right, all right.
How would you define the term artist?
Oh, bro, you want me to pick a fight? I mean, that's somebody who has something inside them that needs to be expressed, and they do it for that reason, and then that thing now has resonance with people who they may never meet.
While working behind the scenes with Strombo, traveling across the country asking Canadians about the stories that made us, I started to wonder, what makes a story Canadian? I'm Gavin Seal, a filmmaker and content creator from Montreal, Quebec. So I've set off on a mission to talk to some of the biggest names in First Nations and Canadian film, TV, and digital about how they're redefining what that means. These are the artists, these are the creators who are reshaping and reimagining traditional narratives about what makes a story Canadian.
My name is Ella Maya. I've been a Skimtail Feathers. I'm an actor, director, and writer, and sometimes I produce. I don't identify as Canadian. I'm a Blackfoot person. My people have been in our part of the world since time immemorial, long before this country was ever even in the settler imagination. I think Canada is a story in the sense that it's constructed. It's an idea. It's not really a thing. And it's rife with, white supremacy and inequity. I really struggle with my relationship to it. Unfortunately, there are very outdated understandings of evaluation of story. We have to make material that is palatable to a very specific demographic.
White people.
Yes, that is palatable to white settlers with a very comfortable idea of what Canada is. And I think that's why a lot of people in this country don't actually watch Canadian television.
Perhaps we should perform a rebonding ritual.
That seems logical.
My name is Gia Sandhu, and I am an actress. Probably most people would know me from Star Trek. Spock's fiance on the show. This is actually a character from the original series. That's when I realized this is a really big deal. Especially in the past, very often when I'm going in for auditions, there was always something to do with a cliched cultural reference.
I'm Mayumi Yoshida. I'm a writer, director, actor. People may have seen me in a show called The Man in the High Castle on Amazon Prime. When they notice, they're like, "You're just so different." It's like, yeah, I don't wear a kimono. Surprise. Systemically, I think bigger roles were given to certain demographics, and I didn't fit those roles. I didn't look like those roles. I didn't sound like those roles. I had to sort of dumb my English down to play what I look like, which always felt strange to me. Had to always have an accent, and I learned that from a lot of other filmmakers, that there's a whole education process because of that systemic racism that's just been ingrained in us. It's okay for someone like me to be the lead. One of the reasons why I came to Vancouver is because, first of all, I was in Japan and I was religiously watching Grey's Anatomy with my mom. And I saw Sandra Oh's character, Christina Yang. She had this scene where she breaks down in her wedding dress. Take us off, take us off. It's such a beautiful scene, but then at the same time, it shook me to the core to see this Asian woman in this very complex scene, playing this very layered character. I can't believe I'm seeing this on the biggest show. When I heard that she's Canadian, I just always thought, oh my God, I would love to go to Canada.
You can't be what you can't see. And even though I don't ever want to be the only person creating content about Indigenous people, maybe I'm inspiring the next generation to make cooler things than I have. Netestakas and Sonny Valentine, which means I am Sonny Valentine in Cree. I really love writing. I'm a screenwriter. I've worked on a Walking Dead video game, TV series called Acting Good on CTV, a kids show called Builder Brothers Dream Factory. That was actually one of my biggest successes personally. They had a Cree girl who was the best friends of the lead twin characters, and her name was Mel. And I always believed if I ever wrote for a Cree person, it would be my own creation. And so being able to write for Mel already eliminated that, like, oh wait, I can write for a Cree person and it's not mine. Somebody else created her. It was amazing to me because I pitched an episode about Orange Shirt Day, like a residential school ultimately. The people in the writing room were asking like, well, how are you going to tell this story without really going into like the horrors of that history?
I'd like to make something for Cookham as beautiful as this doll and to honor the residential school kids. You can work on it at the Dream Factory. We're happy to help.
You tell a little grade 1 kid in Winnipeg, these kids were taken away from their parents, and they understand that. They understand how horrible that is without having to get into the physical and sexual and emotional violence. And I was really proud to write that episode because it helped heal something in me about being an intergenerational survivor and wanting to go back and heal your grandparents, your parents, because like they didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve to live in a world where just being Indigenous meant something was wrong with them. And I feel like I changed the world a little bit by having that episode.
In the specific, we find the universal, and I found that with my own work in making films about my experiences or those I know and love. People who don't have the same lived experiences as me are interested in watching those stories on screen.
My name is Jillian McKercher, and I am the writer and director of the film Lucky Star.
What is going on with you?
I'm just having a run of bad luck.
This isn't a run of bad luck, it's you! Are you gambling again?
No, but I need money.
Lucky Star is a family drama about a father who gets scammed and returns to playing poker in secret from his family to make the money back, and we see how that decision affects the rest of his loved ones. I'm biracial, and my mother's family is Chinese. Based on my lived experience here in Calgary, I wanted to show that fusion of where we came from and who we are living here today. That prairie story hadn't been told, so I saw a gap and I wanted to fill it. Lucky, he's a gambler. Gambling is like super ingrained in Asian culture, but it's also ubiquitous. Every culture gambles. Cultural identity is like, obviously it's a major part of us. Everything we do is shaped by it, but at the same time, it's not like we're thinking about it all the time. It's not like, okay, I'm going to use chopsticks because I'm Chinese descent. Like, we're just using chopsticks. So I wanted to show that like broadly, where the culture is just something that we do. It's not something that we're like intellectualizing.
I've read the reviews on Letterboxd, and there's one guy that was like really on one of my films was like, this is what happens when you get a white person to make a brown story. Dude didn't do his research. My name is Ian Bala, and I'm a South Asian filmmaker from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I hid the fact that I was South Asian for so many years. Honestly, up until realizing most of my friends knew so much about their culture and they were proud of it and making stories about them, that I was like, wow, it can be cool. I started writing my first feature film, Stroumboulopoulos, and it took years to kind of find my voice. My experience with culture and telling stories in Canada is so unique. I find wearing turbans really weird and interesting. My dad wore one on occasion, on special occasions. I put that in my movie, but I don't really understand the cultural significance behind it, but I just find it interesting when a character's wearing one. I've actually very much honed in on family stories, cultural stories, but from my point of view, because I'm not super in touch with my culture, but that's usually the point of view I take.
Underneath culture, come back to like humanism. Who are we as humans? What are we connected to? And like, I think what I struggle with is how can I do something that is still respecting people who are like, I come from a place of culture and I want that represented, but also challenging people to not only be defined by that. We might say, we want to rid ourselves of these tropes, but then we're the ones who expect the tropes to be on screen, or we might even create them or enforce them.
Filmmakers and writers have been forced to play into, what the stereotypes are about ourselves in order to just make anything at all. And now I think that there's a lot more freedom for us to tell stories that go beyond that. We've kind of done that now, and I hope that we just keep moving in that direction.
I think we're in a transition of confusion and a bit of discomfort, but I think in time we're gonna have space for both. We're so fortunate to live in a place like Canada that allows pluralism and has people from different cultures try to come together to build this vision of who we are here. There's room for everyone.
My name is Tope Babalola. I'm a writer, director, producer, filmmaker, digital content creator.
So I can just tap my American Express Platinum card? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, but your card declined? What? I said your American Express Platinum card declined?
In the digital space, primarily on TikTok and YouTube. Over 2 million followers on TikTok, 760,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'm in active development on a youth mystery series.
You need to tell me exactly what happened at the schoolhouse last night.
Why do you care?
Because the whole town thinks that we had something to do with it.
Someone sent me clues, leading me to the schoolhouse.
Filmmakers who aren't on social media and they're really how do I get onto these digital spaces and kind of build an audience? I almost have the opposite problem where it's a little frustrating at times trying to get people in the industry to see me as more than just a TikToker, which I despise that name, by the way. It is kind of challenging to get people to see my value outside of my following and kind of been a bit of a battle that I'm still trying to navigate.
Because of the focus on star power, the old ways of doing things, it can be really detrimental to first-time filmmakers of a diverse background because of the classism that's sometimes inherent in festivals. That can be scary. It can be overwhelming that you don't fit into this genre of what kind of auteur filmmaker you should be.
Every filmmaking era has their thing, right? There's the old studio system and then there's the independent system. Right now, for better and worse, you have to come as a fully formed filmmaker, so a filmmaking package. So we do have to take ownership of our stories from a business perspective too. People are already doing it instinctively as well as if you're on social media and you're building a voice. It doesn't surprise me that people are starting there from a younger generation.
I view social media as a tool. It's a way to kind of experiment with ideas at a production level that isn't millions of dollars. And the platform that I choose to distribute the things that I make is simply just that. I'm in the same industry as everybody else. I'm not an influencer who wants to be in movies. I am a filmmaker, and I've always been a filmmaker.
On Turtle Island, our colonizers' languages are the main two official languages. There's not a single Indigenous language ever being represented. It's showing the Canadian people what's important and what's not. My name is Tristan Greyes and I'm a filmmaker. A Cree Approach is a documentary about my journey in discovering why I don't speak my language through the life of my late grandmother, Dr. Frida Hennique.
In Nehiawewen, Kokum means your grandmother. Nokum means my grandmother. Somewhere along losing our language and trying to retain it, we started calling our grandmothers Kokum.
I think a lot of us are trying to reclaim our cultural identity and our language and preserve that. It's up to us to maintain that preservation, otherwise it's just gone. And so learning my language has been a really incredibly tough journey. I used to ask my mother, why can't you teach me Cree? She didn't know how, and it confused me because my grandmother, Kokum in my language, knew it fluently. And she was a teacher. She was a world-renowned scholarly linguist for Cree language. We are sovereign people. We are outside of the Canadian government. If they truly respect the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, it would be to bring Indigenous languages to the forefront of Canadian television, films.
To limit to certain languages feels like you're limiting who can tell those stories and who can tell them authentically. My name is Natchditz Dimeta. I am a producer based in Vancouver, British Columbia. Akashi is a feature that I'm producing, directed by filmmaker Mayumi Yoshida.
よその人におじいちゃんのこと勘違いしてもらいたくなかったから。
It's based on a true story between me and my grandmother. Shot in Japan and Canada. It's a family drama / coming of age, but also a sweeping love story.
In Canadian cinema, I haven't seen a film that embraces the Japanese language or any foreign language for that matter. It's unapologetic about it, and it's a crucial part of the story.
Et je m'identifie beaucoup à tout le monde qui lutte contre un monolithe, une certaine seule chose, une langue, une couleur de peau, une culture. Je m'appelle Danielle Sturck et je suis cinéaste franco-manitobaine. Dans ma série, j'ai pu avoir la liberté de raconter l'histoire de ces francophones-là qui parlent en français à la maison, mais au travail, quand ils font le service aux gens, il y avait tellement une haine anti-français ici qu'il fallait qu'ils le cachent, il fallait qu'ils ne le parlent pas. Il y avait de l'agression vis-à-vis ça. C'est une fiction, ma série, mais ça a été basé vraiment sur des expériences vraies de ma famille. Moi, je trouve que c'est une série qui est juste une petite tranche très unique, d'un vécu très unique. Puis j'ai eu des lettres à travers le pays qui disaient « Ah, je suis à Calgary ou en dessous, je suis une famille chinoise, on avait un diner comme ça. » Il y avait des batailles politiques dans notre diner.
Language is such a crucial part of identity. I grew up here most of my life, and I grew up in a household of people who spoke Thai. When I speak with my parents, I'm speaking Thai 100% of the time. If I were to tell a story about, my experience growing up and I feature scenes of my parents, there's no other way to tell that story.
My name is Kathy Ann Thomas, producer and founder of Cotton Bush Productions based in Montreal, Quebec. What I love about Montreal is the multiculturalism of it all. I can walk on St. Catherine and I can hear Spanish, I can hear Greek, I can hear Italian, I can hear French, I can hear English. I hear people mixing their languages. It's not just one language, they're speaking 3 different languages, which is always fun. I speak French, I speak English, I think in French, I think in English. Unfortunately, I don't see that represented in the products that come out of Quebec. Here in Quebec, the main provincial funder for arts, film, television, anything artistic is SODEC. There's a cap of maximum 20% on projects in other languages that are not French. We have so many different cultures, so having a cap kind of puts a barrier between us, makes it difficult for producers to produce material that is representative of the city that we all grew up in.
Je suis bilingue à l'intérieur de moi et ma langue voyage de l'autre. Donc, le prochain film que je fais est en fait trilingue avec un peu d'espagnol. Et je veux cette liberté-là. Mais c'est toujours une grande question, où est-ce que j'applique, comment, dans quelle langue je dois l'écrire pour être reçu par les instances gouvernementaux. Tandis que je sais que le public, nous, le public, on a des sous-titres, on réjouit de toutes les langues du monde quand on voit les films et ces différentes perspectives. Alors, pour moi, j'aimerais bien pouvoir ne pas choisir à un moment donné. Quand je crée, ça peut être fluide entre l'anglais et le français, comme ça l'est dans ma vie, en fait.
I do hope for something better in the future, and I think in order to work towards that, we have to be honest about what this so-called country is.
For so long, we've been so excluded, and now they're just trying to meet a quota. It's not enough. People will be like, oh, I'm trying to do this Indigenous film. Can you be our Indigenous person, advisor? That's not an Indigenous film. You just have an Indigenous advisor.
Narrative sovereignty means that we have sovereignty over our narratives in the way that we are represented, particularly on screen. For so long, our intellectual property has been co-opted, quite harmfully misrepresented on screen because it's simply been placed in the hands of people who don't have the right to tell our stories.
I am very vocal about how much power I want with the story. So much Indigenous content that we don't have to have our own genre, that we don't have to have our own little segment on Crave TV.
Young Indigenous storytellers are finding such creative and inspiring ways to tell our stories, and they're doing so in a way that steps beyond just sort of like the trauma lens of the Indigenous experience, which is, I think, what a lot of Canadians are used to or expect when we're so much more than that.
When you're pushed to your very limits, where you have to make that hard 4 a.m. look in the mirror conversation with yourself, then you find another gear.
Where I am today and a lot of the work I've done has been through my production company. I did that out of necessity. I did it because if I don't make this film, I'm gonna die. I have to make this film. I took a bet on myself. I took the risk on myself. If we want something to change and we make a stand, it can happen. And I've seen that happen in my lifetime in really powerful ways that are inspiring.
Actors in the UK and in the US end up with really rich demo reels because they're given opportunities to play incredible roles. The writing there is wonderful, and I think that it becomes difficult for Canadian actors to compete with that because a lot of the work that we end up doing here is, the generic lawyer, doctor, police officer. And so I think that the more risks that we are allowed to take here, starting with rewarding riskier writing and supporting directors who, maybe don't have a long history of directing procedurals here, then I think that we will reap the benefits of that on an international scale.
As someone who grew up Black in the prairies, I think that there's so many stories out there of the Black experience outside of the GTA that I think are, quite frankly, never touched upon. Showing that diversity in Canada and showing that the Black Canadian experience is not monolithic.
If Bluey can be so popular and Bluey can be a little white boy's favorite character, even though she's a girl and a dog, I'm I hope the same thing can happen for us.
I don't want allies, I want accomplices.
What's the difference?
The difference is somebody's gonna be there beside you, not just somebody who's go Indigenous cinema, and then there's somebody who's saying your name in spaces where there's opportunities, never being silent when there's not enough Indigenous stories, and advocating.
There's still a lot of work to do when it comes to, we're going to not let you, but empower you and support you in telling your story your way.
Because some progress has been made, people think that, well, then we're done the progress job. Now we're into that dialing back. It's a very strange time that we live in. Progress can never end because the people who own it will always want to keep more for themselves. You have to keep fighting for it.
I think that curiosity can ignite real change as long as we're willing to take a chance.
That's all I want from my art is here's a better world that we can have if people stop being so dumb.
For all the flaws Canada has, and it does have them, in Canada, we let these conversations happen. We can fight about them, but we rarely try to stop them from happening. I think that's what really separates us, and I welcome that kind of conversation.
That's gonna make the cut, This video has been part of a campaign called Made New. Made, English, and New, which in French means we. But now the question that these artists are asking with their film and television shows and digital creations is, where do we go next? They're starting the conversations, and some of these conversations are challenging, but they're conversations that we need to have. And that's why we rely on our artists to start them. See you at the movies.